It's the 2022 World Cup. It's Netherlands players. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin, and today we are continuing our look at the squads for the 2022 World Cup. And today we focus on Netherlands. We interrupt this media cast with a bold and slashing edit, a brief introduction to the shortened player series. It's basically the last section of the full-length version. There we examined the formation up until June 2022. We also went through all the players who had recently appeared for the national team and judged the likelihood of their making the squad and giving information on their history and standing with the squad. For this media cast, we have washed all that chatter out and are panning down to the nugget. We hope it incites your interest in the full-length version, the link to which is available in the show notes. So now, joining in progress. We end with a player-by-player review, and then we'll just have a bit of discussion about the squad here, kind of going back to the notes at the top. So once again, Frank de Jong managed them during the Cup, and then Louis van Gaal took over after the Cup. So they got rid of de Jong and replaced him with Louis van Gaal in his third stint as Netherlands manager. So we did talk about a bit of disunity on the squad, and soon we're going to talk about the club affiliations of Netherlands. The question, though, is whether Van Gaal is the man who's going to bring all that talent together to be one of the strong teams in the Cup. So Netherlands do have a lot of talent, but aren't always unified in the dressing room or on the field. The question then is Van Gaal going to be the solution for that? The other question, which is related to Van Gaal, is they had a very steady formation and were using the same players through their 7 games after the Euro Cup of World Cup qualifying. And they did well with that in a 4-3-3 formation. But now, in the last Nations League games, they used 3 different formations over those 4 games and a whole lot of new players. So bringing players in, maybe to check them out, to see, usually that's done during friendlies, I must say, but to kind of see what talent they have and maybe look into new talent. But it's getting a bit close to the World Cup to kind of start that process. So my question is whether they're creating a problem for themselves, bringing in new players that they then have to consider. What do you do with the old players who were in that position and stuff like that? Those are my concerns for Netherlands. All right, let's move on. Club affiliations. Well, I've talked about them as we went through the players one by one, but in summary, they just have players playing for some of the top clubs in the Netherlands. So that's 5 players with Ajax and 3 players with PSV Eindhoven. They have 2 players in Spain with Barcelona and 1 with Villarreal. They have 2 players in Italy. In Italy, they have 2 players for Inter Milan, 2 with Atalanta, 1 with Roma. England, 3 of the top teams, Liverpool, Manchester City, and Man United. They have 1 player at each of those teams. 2 with Bayern Munich in Germany and 1 at Dortmund, and Besiktas in Turkey. So just top clubs all around there. Some of them do play for kind of secondary clubs like Vitesse in Netherlands, Bologna in Italy, Norwich in England, Freiburg and stuff like that. But we would have to say their club affiliation, their pedigree is very strong, and sometimes too much is made of that. But definitely going into the cup, that's why I say, can Van Gaal bring the talent together? Because obviously they have to be talented to reach those teams. But the question is whether they show it as a team, as a national team, because sometimes Netherlands doesn't. Okay, well, I put together a little chart of the players that we had as definite, likely, or possible, and I'm kind of comparing them with other teams as I go through this podcast. So it's just a kind of a fun little experiment that I do, and we take a look at four things. So one is the total number of players under consideration. So that gives an idea as to which squads are very steady and which clubs are trying out a lot of new players as they come into the cup. So the average there is currently around 30 candidates. Netherlands has 33, so they seem to be trying out a lot of new candidates. By comparison, we have Ghana, who are trying out a lot of new candidates, kind of worryingly so. But then we have Senegal with 24 and Qatar with 26. Both steady teams playing the game, same players playing their games time after time, working together and working out the teamwork and the communication on the field. As far as Netherlands goes, they seem to have that as in their World Cup qualification, and now have gone through a lot of experimentation in the 4 recent Nations League games. The next stat is the average age of the team. So in general, 25 to 27 seems to be the average. And Netherlands is 26.6 among the players on my chart there. So that's pretty average. And they have actually, a lot of the veterans are in their 30s. They have quite a few players in their 30s. But they do have quite a few younger players too. So it kind of balances out in the middle. But I would say actually a good balance of veterans and new players coming in. Average number of caps is 26.5. And let me see how that compares with other teams. That is about average. Qatar was shockingly more than everyone else because they've been playing so many games together as a unit over the last 3 years. And the last one is the total goals among the players we've selected. And Netherlands is high at 130, well above the average of 86. That averages out to 3.9 goals per player. So because we're talking about a larger number of players, 33 players, that partly accounts for the number of goals. But I think in general, the stat shows them to be an attacking team. They can definitely score a lot of goals. Okay, we'll go through the players to watch or the issues to watch. And in defense, well, we have 6 candidates for goalkeeper. We're going to go through the candidates at the end here. But the big question is who is going to replace Stekelenburg as the starting goalkeeper, because they've been mixing and matching quite a bit. The other question is, will they go with the World Cup qualifying back line, or will they start using some of the newcomers that they've really introduced in the last 4 Nations League games? I gotta say, the Nations League games went well. They won 3 and tied 1, so not a problem. But they may be creating a selection problem for themselves by having, a reliable background and a whole bunch of new players who want to get onto the field. And then who do you choose? during the podcast, I compared that to the USA's team, who seemed to have a similar problem. I did have a note about Wijnaldum, and is he there or is he not? And the answer is he is not, because during the podcast we saw that he's injured and not expected back until after the World Cup. He played an important role in the attacking end at first, so they've replaced that attacking side of Wijnaldum with a whole bunch of new players, and on the central midfielder role, which he played during the World Cup qualification games, he moved back into the central midfielder. They seem to be a bit lacking there, and so they sometimes move attacking midfielders back to play in the central midfield. So again, more of an attacking team. As far as the attack goes, I usually give the percentages of some of the top attackers. So who can we expect to get the goals from? Well, Netherlands has one player above 50% and three players above 30%. So that is very high in terms of goals per cap ratio. I'm giving listeners a little bit of time to think who I'm going to say. And probably not a surprise that Memphis Depay is the one above 50%. He has 42 goals in 80 games. Really a very high ratio there. So we can expect to see him scoring goals. Amazingly, the second highest is Vincent Janssen. Vincent Janssen, who only appeared in the very last game of recent games. He is 38.9%, 7 goals in 18 games. And then Danjuma and Jorginho Wijnaldum, both above 30%. Danjuma, though, it's only 2 goals in 6 games, so not really a fair way to judge there. But Wijnaldum, 26 goals in 86 games, so they'll miss him possibly at both ends of the field. But other players who are not guaranteed starters, but who you may see scoring goals during the Cup, are Malen and Weghorst. They're both above 20%. Even Davy Klaassen. And then Steven Bergwijn and Cody Gakpo are both above 25%. Along with Klaassen. And then Noah Lang, 1 goal in 5 games, a new name. We'll go through new names. But they have a lot of players who can score, although a lot of them will be substitutes rather than starters. So the only kind of starter star is Memphis Depay as a scorer. So look for that. Okay, we'll go through just by name some of the new people on the squad. So we have Louis van Gaal. Louis van Gaal is their new manager since after the Euro Cup. We have a whole whack of new goalies who have all been kind of involved in some way or another. So again, we talked about them in the long version of the podcast or of the media cast here. So we'll just mention them by name in this review. Mark Flecken, Justin Billow, Joel Drommel, and Kjell Scherpen. So definitely among goalkeepers, they have a bit of a selection problem because in addition to that, they have 2 likely candidates on the table too. In central defense, we have Jurriën Timber making his way into the squad, and to a lesser degree, Jordan Teze, and even Bruno Martins Indy coming back from a long winter off the team, recently coming into the squad. So he's a veteran, but I put him as new because he's newly back. In the defensive midfield, Jordi Schouten, and left wingers, a couple of them in Noah Lang and Cody Gakpo. Some of these won't make the team, but quite a few of them will. And Goose Till is an attacking midfielder, but generally playing as a defensive, as a central midfielder. And then injuries. Well, first and foremost, Jorginho Wijnaldum is not expected to be in the cup. He's expected to recover sometime after the cup. We also have Bayern Munich player Ryan Gravenberch with, I believe it was an ankle injury there. Left defender who is a doubtful candidate anyway, Owen Windahl. And forward Arno Danjuma, although I think we said that he should be fit by the time the cup comes around. Okay, finally, notable absences, and again, we talked about them in the long version of the podcast, but Martin Stecklenburg, his absence kind of creates a void to fill as starting goalkeeper. In left defence, Patrick van Arnholt, who seems to now be replaced by Daley Blind. We have a player who's doing well in England, but is off the squad, the national squad, Joel Veltman. And similarly, Donny van de Beek with Man United in England, which was a big move for him, but he hasn't been seeing game time, which seems to cost him his position on the national squad. And Ryan Babel, who kind of made a comeback prior to the Euro Cup, but didn't make the Euro Cup squad. And finally, Luc de Jong, who did have an injury, but that doesn't seem to be the reason that he's not with the national squad. He just seems to not be being selected. So if we learn anything more about these players, we can do that during the update podcast. But in closing here, I'm just going to go through the players we've selected as starters for the squad. And again, it's hard to tell. They had a very steady squad for the World Cup 2021 qualifying games, or the qualifying games for this cup. But then they kind of put it in the blender for the Nations League games. And now I don't know what to expect. Anyway, it will be Louis van Gaal managing it, unless they get rid of him at this late point. For goalkeeper, we have three likely candidates, Jasper Cillessen, Mark Flecken, and Tim Krul, but we also have three possible candidates we introduced in the new section, and who knows which of them is going to be the starter. I would kind of edge towards Jasper Cillessen there, but in terms of recent participation, which we discussed in the long version, it's still hard to know. Central defenders. Oh, it looks like we didn't do starters when we went through that. But we have Stefan de Vrij and Virgil van Dijk. I think they will be the starters. Matthias de Ligt is a candidate, and if they go with a three-man defense, a stronger candidate yet. But I just have him as likely to make the squad here. So the definite, likely, possible, all of that is their likelihood of making the final squad. And then the green highlights for those on YouTube, the ones I'm going through now, are starters, the players we think are starters. So left back, almost certainly Daley Blind, although he does sometimes play as a central defender. Right back, almost certainly Denzel Dumfries. Defensive midfielder Toon Koopmeiners, we have him as likely to make the cup, but I shouldn't have brought him up because he's not. We don't have him as a starter. However, in central midfielder, we have Frankie de Jong as a definite starter there, as a definite candidate to make the cup and as a starter. Giorgio Wijnaldum is injured. He probably would have been a starter, either in the central midfielder or in the attacking role. He moved back during World Cup qualification to a more of a central midfield role. Left wingers, all of those are likely to make the cup. Steven Bergwijn, Noah Lang, Cody Gakpo. But we can't put a finger on which of them is going to start because they've been mixing and matching so much lately. However, we can say that Steven Berghuis will be a definite starter, but difficult to say if he's going to be kind of a right forward and attacking right winger, or in central defence where he has been playing. Central midfield where he's been playing recently. David Klaassen was also moved back to play more central midfield in recent times, but we have him as a definite starter. Is he a starter? I didn't know we put him as a starter there. Anyway, and then as a forward, Memphis Depay is the only one we consider a starter, but there are a few likely or possible candidates who will be on the squad and possibly a starter, but more likely as a substitute. All right. So a bit hard to tell, and maybe we can give some clarification when we see who starts their games between now and our update podcast in November. So thanks very much for listening. Keep in mind, yes, we will be doing that update in November. And meanwhile, keep an eye on us at Soccerphiles Canada. We have done one look at Netherlands team, and you can find the link to that in the show notes along with other links to relevant podcasts. Or you can look at our whole library at soccerphiles.captivate.fm, or just type Soccerphiles into Google. That's Soccerphiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. We are Soccerphiles Canada, so I hope to see you in our next podcast. Bye-bye.